Alright, good morning everyone. I'm going to do a video on how we are making sap here. So I wanted to show you what we're starting out with. I have 4 jars on this Norwegian maple tree. And these are about half-gallon jars. And got a jug there. Jiggy. And on most of them, they'll take all day to fill up. Maybe I'll have to empty them, once before the evenings because they're going to get full. And then I'll let them go all night. This one, I've hit the jugular, I guess. I've had to empty it several times a day when it's running good. And it's about 9:30 in the morning here. And you can already tell it is just now starting to go. Even 20 minutes ago, it wasn't dripping that fast. So we're gonna get a lot out of that one today. My method was really crude. I had some 1/4-inch copper tubing that I just drilled a hole, stuck it in, and next year when we do this, we'll probably get some real taps because I've lost a lot of sap that way, of how they leaked out and leaked down the tree. So there's a lot of waste there. But anyway, I'm gonna go set up by the grill and we're going to go through 5 gallons today. We've got a bucket full. Did a bucket full yesterday. Thought I should probably show some people how we're doing this. So I'll get set over at the grill. So this is the grill that I'm using. It's an older grill, but it has a side burner on it. And the trick that I've learned here is if we're home all day, we don't need to use a big pot or a lot of fire. I can do this small pot and it keeps the surface area small so that I can just keep adding to the pot all day. Just got a measuring cup and a spoon. Strainer, sometimes you need to strain it as you're going. I do filter a couple times, pouring it in another bucket through a cotton sheet that we wash each time. That'll get done a couple times per batch. But if you're out here, just scoop it up and throw it away. And here's our bucket of syrup there. It is full. I'm just gonna fill up the pot. Start. Now the only thing you want to make sure of when you start is to not burn the syrup. Could be touching the bottom. So as it gets started, just want to keep it stirring for the next 5 or 10 minutes. But it's not complicated. Just see what it's doing. Now here's the trick. This thing will not get hot and it will blow out from the wind. But what I've learned, I grabbed a couple 12-inch cement blocks, and I have essentially made my own oven. I can keep the heat in, block out the wind, and that'll stay that way all day. I can see the gas from underneath. We're still in the same propane tank that we've done about 15 gallons on, and our yield right now is still about 40 to 1. We're doing about 5 gallons to a pint. One of them was a little bit more, but not by much. But I'm gonna let this boil all day, and then maybe do some shots of me filling it back up, and you can see how dark it gets. But this is what it'll do all day until this evening, and then we'll bring it in and I'll show you how we finish getting from sap to syrup. Just wanted to show it's been about 15-20 minutes, and just coming out to give it another stir. This is what it looks like right as it's starting to boil. So it's not really a roiling boil. Let's say that in the morning. But it'll get there. I'll show you what that looks like. We took about 20 minutes to get up to boil. Alright, so this is what it looks like when it's at a full boil. And again, it's been another 15 minutes and we've already lost about 1/4 of an inch there. You can kind of see on the side. So I'm just gonna give it another stir, and maybe in another 15 minutes or so come out and add some more, fill it up, and that's what we do all day. So it is now 11:30, and that's how full that one. It just goes super fast compared to the others. It's almost full in 2 hours. Let's go check the pot. I have added a few times already. Usually anything in there, but just in case. And we'll keep waiting. Alright, so it is 6 o'clock in the evening. I have filled up the pot several times, and we are down to, let's see, nothing. Oh, not even half a gallon.
Had a little issue with the propane tank. It finally ran out, so there was an hour or so of nothing happening out here before we figured it out. But once that gets down a little more to where it's all in one pot, then I will take this pot and filter it back into this one, and then I'll take what's in that bucket inside onto the stove to finish the rest of it. And I don't know if you can tell, it's already getting kind of yellow. It is not clear, and it smells like syrup. For the evening, the rest of the sap has stopped, and I collected during the course of the day probably 3 gallons. So not too bad. I think we're getting towards the end because the trees are starting to bloom. But that's it. So I think the next step will be you'll see inside on the stove. Alright, so we had this outside boiling all day, and then life kind of took over and we didn't really have time to finish it. But I want to keep it in a 5-gallon bucket size so we can see what that reduces down to. So this is what we're left with here, and we're going to filter it into this bucket, which it was in, which I've cleaned, and it has a cloth sheet that's been washed, and it's got a belt just around there to hold it down. And I'm going to pour it in slowly. I've seen people not filter their sap, and we're going to find out why you really want to do that. It's a good thing to make sure you get your sheet wet before, and then so that the sap won't try to get up the sides. But you can really see how dark it's getting. And there's some of the sand and residue from the other minerals that are in there. That's what we want to filter out. Let's move down to the bucket. So that's the whole pot still in there. Once the sediment reaches the bottom, it gets really slow to filter. Sometimes you gotta shake the bucket and just let it go different ways, which you'll see in there in a minute. When it's all done, what's left? I think, why would anybody want to eat that? So it's a good thing we're getting it out. Okay, so here's what's left after we've let that sit for a while. And I'm going to take this belt off. Get the rest of that out, but I want to show you. If we can see it. the goo. So I don't know why anybody would want to keep that in there. It's hairs, bugs, dirt, it's chunks of stuff. So got that out. And what's left, we will boil down tomorrow. And this should be, how much is that? It's about a little more than a gallon, and that'll go back down to a pint. So we still have some boiling to do. But if we're lucky, this is what we'll end up with. This is one from last weekend. So we will be back tomorrow and see what happens. All right, we are back the next day. And we're going to take our sap from last night. And this is my finishing pot. So every batch has gone through this. It's just easier to see. It's a little bit smaller. And I've switched to a metal spoon for the end. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on high. Now the trick here is you don't want to let it get too hot too fast, because you boiled it down so much that it's got more sugar content. If you start boiling without movement, then you could burn the bottom of the pan and ruin your syrup. So keep it moving as it warms up, and we'll check back in on it as it's boiling down. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes. We are at a full boil. Not frothy, not overdoing it. If you turn it on high and just leave it, it will foam over. Just let it bubble just like this. This should be, we're going to check here. Got a little wire hook that I made for my awesome thermometer. And we are right at 212.4.5. Our water has been consistently 212.5 for the last couple weeks. It will stay that way for almost the entire boil until the last 15 or 20 minutes. The other thing is that as we go from bucket to pot and back and forth, we're boiling every time, so we don't really need to worry about sanitizing. The jars at the end, you want to boil those and sanitize those when you get ready for that. But up until that point, we're killing everything that's in there, so don't worry about that. We're just going to let this boil probably for an hour, a couple hours. We'll check on it. But otherwise, that's just where it's going to be. The other thing, people say you're going to peel your paint or you're going to hurt your house. This is not a big enough operation to do that. Every once in a while, I'll have to take a rag and just kind of wipe above the range hood, but that's about it. So we'll come back and check on this in a little bit. Okay, so we've been boiling for an hour. You can see how much that's gone down. Gonna check the temperature here again. And 212.7. So that to me says we're getting to the point where we need to start getting stuff ready. And it could be another half an hour or so before we're done. But it's starting to get to above the boiling point of water. So
Gotta keep an eye on it now. Okay, so it's been about a half an hour since we went from 213 to now 214, hitting 215, and you can see the froth has changed significantly, and that's when you know you're about done. It just has a very different consistency to the boil. So this is where we stay close. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to pull it off at 220 since the water was boiling at 212 and a half. So we want it 7.5 degrees higher than the boiling point of water. So I'll stand here and watch it and see what happens. We are at 217 there, and I'm going to get set up to can it. Alright, I hit 220. Off. Just immediately different. Get set up to can this, and left-handed, so can go right in the jar because we've already hit past the boiling point of water. So once we seal it, it's like canning it. Well, there we are. 5 gallons, 1 pint. Okay, so here's our finished pint from 5 gallons of sap. Topped it off with just a little bit of another can that I had from last week so that we could seal it all the way. This is going to go to my brother and sister-in-law who are in New Hampshire and have kind of challenged us to see whose syrup is better because they claim their New Hampshire syrup is the best. We're going to see if that is true.